Brendan, thank you very much for joining us today. Why did you choose to join tax when you joined the profession many years ago?
Well, actually, when I started my career, it wasn't actually in tax, it was in banking. And an opportunity arose to move from banking to work in the taxation office in Australia. So that was the catalyst to move. And I really wasn't quite sure what was going to be in front of me as a career. I was doing my degree part-time and working full-time, and it was just an opportunity to study and earn some money, and it just blossomed from there on.
An opportunity may have come before you get into the tax area, but certainly something must have triggered it. Something must have said, I'm going from bank to now tax. Arguably, that's a very different career path.
It's probably the best grounding for anyone to have a career, as I found, that I could go from zero to hero almost throughout the organisation. Different experiences, different exposure, so it's not just doing like a corporate tax role, and that's served me very well overall in my career, having that depth and breadth of knowledge.
You've spent a better part of 30 years in the tax profession, or at least looking at this area. What continues to excite you about where tax is and where it's going?
Well, I think I guess the first buzz would be the fact that you're there at the conception of a transaction or the incorporation of a company or a business. And that's exciting because it's being part of that business all the way through. I think today, we're seeing the greatest tax transformation on international standards for the last 25 years. So that's pretty exciting to see how the world's trying to catch up with legislation to the way that business is carrying on. So 30, 40 years ago, the digital economy was really just talking about a couple of digits. Now it's talking about the ability to do business to business, business to consumer in a very different model. So everything changes and it's a chance to refresh, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So where there's uncertainty, there's challenges. Where there's challenges, there's opportunities.
Now, in the tax space, uncertainty is not something that people in that space would like, indeed not something that businesses would like. Given that there are so many uncertainties now, given that there's so much change in the international space where tax is concerned, what future challenges do you see for tax professionals where they are now?
Well, I think part of it is being in-house at the moment, being able to satisfy board requirements, being able to sign off on financial statements as to adequacy of provisions, etc., when there is uncertainty. When a board comes to you and says, well, what is the position here? You'd like to be able to say, with some degree of certainty, is it more likely than not what the position is? But unfortunately, because the tax law is implemented by governments, and governments are elected by the people, it's very hard to predict what's going to happen. At the moment, the whole BEPS issue is very political, and until governments can get the law implemented and then to have it administered by the taxing authorities, we probably had the hardest job out of the lot.
Given where you sit now in the commercial space, sitting in a large company, an MNC, how would you think that tax professionals will be able to handle some of these future challenges? Well,
I think my view is that you've got to handle these challenges in a very open and very direct manner. And that means whether you're meeting with the taxing authorities, or you're meeting with government, with advisors. So by being open and honest about what your issues are and understanding what your business is trying to achieve, that'll put you in a much better position to be able to then drive to that next pit stop and work out what needs to be done.
To a young person who's watching this, they'll be wanting to understand, how do you build a career in tax? How do you survive in this particular profession for a length of time? What advice would you give to someone who's looking to join tax and say, why is it so exciting that they should be committing a part of their professional life in this space?
Well, if I look back on my career, the advice I would give is this. Tax is exciting. It gives people opportunity, as I said earlier, to move from conception to liquidation or burial of a corporation, etc. I've had the opportunity to work in some very significant multinational organisations, and tax has always been a big part of what goes on. And it elevates you into a role which you get to see a lot more than you would if you're doing some other form of maybe accounting or auditing. And it's a great opportunity to add value to your stakeholders and your shareholders.
But where do you start? Do you start with would you advise that people start with a Big Four accounting firm, or should they immediately try to go into the commercial space or try to join government in the Inland Revenue Department, or what?
Well, I think the Big Four obviously have great career path and the progression is quite clear. But I wouldn't discount the Revenue Authority as well, because as I said earlier, it's a great grounding, ability to make great connections, and it's more than just doing the corporate tax returning. And the challenge is going directly into industry with a multinational or even a regional player is that career progression may be a little bit slower because generally we don't have large teams within a tax function. It's maybe 5 or 6 people, so the opportunities may be limited to progress. But certainly consider all options. Don't discount anything and just see where it can take you, and be prepared to move. That's the other thing.
And when people decide to move, obviously they would have to have some sort of experience built up before they would think about that move. If you were to advise a person who's sort of building a career, what is the kind of an indicative length of time they should stay in a particular role in the tax profession?
Well, I think before putting a time frame on it, you've got to understand why is it that you're moving? What's the opportunity that you're pursuing? And again, when I was with the tax office, I spent over 10 years there. I didn't spend 10 years in the same job. I worked in different divisions. I dealt with debt management, so pursuing taxpayers who are not paying their outstanding taxes, the assessing area, appeals, audit, tax policy, indirect taxes. The appeals area I did training. So each time I moved, it was to get more experience, and that greater experience helped me in my next role. And I always thought not just the role I was going for, but the role after that as well. So I think if you are a young person out there at the moment and you're thinking career in tax, yes, be prepared to move on, but also understand what are the opportunities that may be next in the line or the line after, rather than I just got to get promoted. Right?
3 years, 4 years, a typical time frame to be in one role?
I think generally you'd want to be in a role a minimum of 12 months, but ideally somewhere between 2 to 3 years would be preferable.
If you have one bit of advice to leave someone looking to join tax, what will that be?
One bit of advice, think about it, but don't procrastinate. You've got to move with something. If it doesn't turn out right, then learn from that experience and move forward. But give it a go, so to speak, and see how it flows. But be prepared to invest, because it is your career, it's your future. And what you get out of it, what you put into it as well.